Okay, everybody, how about a round of applause for all of the presenters and panelists? You know, we're going to be shifting to a segment focused on a promise to children. And those of us that grew up on the east side of Oahu, all kind of migrated to the Thompson residence. It was like the boys club, girls club, United Way. Anytime you were hungry, so you were always there. And so being with Nainoa and his family from those years back in the 60s, I said to him, you know, you were off to a great career as an Opelu fisherman. And then along the way, you got curious. And he said, you know, now if you catch the Opelu, you cannot eat it because it's contaminated. And so his efforts, as well as the efforts of Ohana are, as you can tell, gaining not only local importance, but global significance. And so right now, we're going to shift, or at least I thought we were going to shift, to Nainoa, please, yeah. So while he's coming up, I'll share with you one other note. I went back to high school to coach after I left for a couple of years, and it happened to be the year that Nainoa was a senior. And there was a coach there that both of us love to this day, who has since passed, Charlie Ane. And I happened to be there one day. This was back in the day when coaches would grab you by the face mask to get your full attention, right? And so Charlie was this massive all-pro NFL lineman with the Detroit Lions. And so he was on Nainoa about missing assignments one day, and you could hear him scream. He goes, Thompson, too small, too slow, and you're not that smart, right? If Nainoa had a 2x4 in his hand at that moment, he would have swung. The point I wanted to make with that story, however, was Charlie knew exactly what he was doing. He got Nainoa, who was smaller than the average defensive back, not as fast as the average defensive back, but he got Nainoa to start thinking about systems and being able to understand how each position worked. And that senior team went on to win the league championship, much of it attributed to Nainoa's leadership of the defense. And so that obviously has translated to greater things with the Polynesian Voyaging Society. So Nainoa, the topic now shifts to the promise to children.
Thank you, John. Thanks for all of you staying. Okay, we don't have much time. It's been a long day and a long afternoon. So, okay, I'll go quick. April 1st, 2008, leadership makes a decision to go around the world. We don't know how to do that. It starts off with pulling Hokulea out of the oceans on September 15, 2010, after about 50,000 miles after the last 30-something years. She was tired. Leadership makes a decision that we'll make a promise that we'll do our best to make sure Hokulea comes home. So we went into dry dock with the promises that no rot, no damage will be on this canoe. If there is, you take it off. We took everything off. The only thing left on Hokulea to make sure we could go around the world is a 1 inch of the skin of the hull of that canoe from 1976. Then we made a promise that we're going to bring our crew home, so we started 6 years of very intense training, raised the bar, running, swimming, all these tests, academics, physical, strength, and you get prepared. And then we did enormous amounts of research into countless hours and hours of research dealing with safety issues. And then we said, well, of course, this voyage is about education. And so let's bring educators together. Infinite amount of meetings with public, private, charter, school teachers. And so there was a decision in 2013 that in the beginning of the year that we're ready to go. We're ready to go. Canoe's ready, crew's ready, our teachers are ready. But man, something was nagging me. And in the time of all the kind of confusion that you live with all these kinds of details, in the waking hours, you're blind. You can't see what's nagging you, but you better pay attention to that, way down deep inside. It was in the middle of March of 2013, about 45 days when we were going to leave. And it was that kind of, when you're most settled and you're most calm and you're most prepared to bring to you what's really troubling you. For me, it's always early in the morning and it's in the dream. I had a black dream, only black and gray, of a girl, a child, on a shoreline I didn't recognize. Lonely, empty, by herself. In a world that wasn't defined, I didn't know where it was. And in the dream, it assumed the child didn't know where it was. And I went from that dream, from the deepest part of sleep, to sitting up, being wide awake, sweating. That something's terribly wrong. Because how do we know if the voyage are for our children, do our children care? Did we really take the time to ask them? And so I got up, thought about it, and that day I canceled the sail. Because we weren't ready to go. Because we didn't have permission from the ones that we were supposed to serve the most. We never asked. So we all got together and said, okay, let's go. 29 ports, about 45 communities, and to as many schools that we can go to. And we made a benchmark that if 5,000 school kids, primarily because they're in summertime, they're not in school, and sign our logbook in this voyage around to all these ports, that would be permission. But we sailed to them. We went to them. And in the logbook that we have, that we cherish, there was 22,000 signatures, which is probably a fraction of the ones who did come and didn't sign in. But when I knew and had a sense that the promise was being fulfilled to these children was when we were in some of the most poorest of our communities, anchored offshore. Waianae, Poka'ibe. A child who didn't sign the logbook, offshore, 11 o'clock at night, swims out in the dark, in the black, by himself. Just his shorts, no shirt, climbs up on the canoe and lies down on the deck and went to bed. I don't know that boy, but he laid there on the star of gladness, on the light that gives him hope. Didn't sign the logbook. He didn't need to. He was the promise. Then we were ready to set sail, and there's another time and a moment because of your father. Archbishop Desmond Tutu came to Hawaii, blessed Hokulea, gave it all his mana and his spiritual strength to protect us, especially in South Africa. Well, that canoe is not designed for that rogue wave. It is not designed for the gale in South Africa. You had no business being there. But it was either that or the pirate. Somehow we trusted that country. I don't know, it was intuitive. It felt like family. Archbishop Desmond Tutu made a promise that he would meet us in South Africa and greet us. So before we left, 47 of the top leaders in universities, private schools, public schools, signed a document called the Promise to Children, saying that they are going to believe in a voyage that has value to improve education, set it on the right course. Then we had the permission to go, and then we sailed and we sailed and we sailed, and we got to Cape Town in November 2015. And Archbishop came, not in the best health. It would be the first, my understanding, public function that we'd go to of the whole year, even though it was November. They had him sitting in a tent to block him from the sun, and he was bundled with blankets and a cap and a jacket on a couch, and he knew he wasn't going to speak, but he was there. And it was a hot day, but he was bundled and cared for with the greatest care. And then there was an African child, went to one of our Hawaiian children, that said, "Can I borrow your pahu? Can I borrow your drum?" And she started beating that drum. And the African children got up and they started dancing and beating the drums. Whether it was a can or anything they could find, they started beating that. They started grabbing the Hawaiian children and brought them into the circle of dancing. And then Archbishop Desmond Tutu, I'll never forget it, ever. Because he got up, he danced with the best of them. Archbishop Desmond Tutu danced with the children in that street. Because of the time of extraordinary joy and of the time of extraordinary hope, I will never forget Cape Town, because that's where I knew that we kept the promise. So we have some very, very important speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you, Nainoa. Everybody, so we pronounce her name correctly. Everybody repeat after me. Say like you're humming. Okay. Mpho. Mpho. The Reverend Canon Mpho Tutu van Furth is a preacher, teacher, writer, and retreat facilitator, and an Episcopal priest. Shortly after her marriage to Marceline van Furth in 2016, she handed in her license to serve in the diocese of the Saldanha Bay Diocese, because the Anglican Church in South Africa does not permit its priests to marry same-sex partners. Tutu van Furth is the daughter of anti-apartheid activist Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu and Leah Tutu. She is the director of the Desmond and Leah Tutu Foundation. At this time, everybody welcome Mpho.
Thank you. Aloha and mahalo. In Nainoa, each time I've heard you speak, you speak with such deep love and reverence for your father, and profound humility and gratitude for what he's taught you. And what stuck in my head in the last days has been, oh, your father would be so proud of you, but not for what you've done, because even though what you've done has been so profoundly moving, and I'll get to that in a minute, but for who you have become. And who you have become is so much more important. Each day we do things, but the spirit in which we do them is as a result of the people that we are. It's the who we are. When I was in seminary, I followed my father. We went for a walk one morning around the seminary campus. And we were walking and chatting and having this wonderful, esoteric, theological conversation. And I was feeling very grown up and wonderfully educated. And as we came towards the end of our walk, my dad bent down and picked up a piece of paper and carried it to a trash bin and dropped it in. This is, after Nobel Prize and how many awards and how many degrees and diplomas and what have you. But it was the theology, not this esoteric thing that is somewhere out there. But how do you treat the earth under your feet, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, and the people we are with? It's not what you've done, it is who you have become. When we talk about educating our children, I always want to say, what is it that we are educating them for? Who is it that we want them to be when they have got to that place in their education journey that we say, yes, we're well done so far? Yeah? Who are the people who we want to steward our planet in a way that is better than the stewardship that we have given? The 1 + 1s matter. The formulae matter. All of those things are crucial. But the heart of the matter is also the heart of the matter. It's the heart of how we educate our children that will let us live into the promise of a future that we want to live in. I was so moved to see Hokulea come in to Table Bay in Cape Town. And I was struck by how profoundly I was moved. And what struck me was not just the witness to the planet, not just the witness to our oceans that has been carried by this voyage and by this voyaging canoe and by her crew, but is also the pride that has been instilled not just in people in this country, not just in people on these islands, but in indigenous people all the way around the world, who get to reclaim the wisdom of their ancestors, who get to say, actually, yes, we did know something. And yes, we get to revive it, to call it back, to bring it back into fruition and into being, because that wisdom is a wisdom that we need in this moment. In South Africa, you won't see the home where Nelson Mandela was born, because he was born in in a mud-built hut, and we built shelters from mud because the mud could then return to the earth when we were done with that building. When we needed to move on, we could move on and you wouldn't see that we had been there. At least not from something that ravages or ruins, but from something that restores and renews. At the end of your journey, and it is so humbling to have been able to stand on the dock at the end of this journey. And as I watched the canoe come in home to Furth, I had this prayer that was ringing in my head, and it's a prayer from the Celtic prayer book that's kind of been part of my prayer life. And it's the blessing that's at the end of their morning prayer ritual. It says, may the peace of the Lord Christ go with you wherever he may send you. May he guide you through the wilderness and guard you through the storms. May he bring you home rejoicing at the wonders he has shown you. May he bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. And the sound of rejoicing was the sound of your rejoicing for the wonders that you had been shown on this journey, but the sound of rejoicing that the whole world joined to welcome you home to your shores again. God bless you, and amen.